Welcome to Rock Your Block. I am Tia Young, your host. Our guest today is returning to our studio to discuss a very important subject that should touch the conscience of every American, regardless of race. Our discussion will focus on Black Lives Matter, what it means, and some of the misconceptions that people across the color line believe to be true. Our guest is an industrial psychiatrist, and his sole commitment to his clients is to help organizations achieve systemic congruence through cultural competence. He provides such expertise to Fortune 500 corporations, to foreign governments, to national government agencies, to parastatals, to associations, and to health and mental health systems. He currently serves as director of his firm, Nichols and Associates, Inc. Please join me in welcoming once again to the Rock Your Block set, Dr. Edwin J. Nichols. Dr. Nichols, it is a pleasure.
Well, hi, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. I know it's been about 2 years, I think,
Yes,
since you were last here on the set. So why don't you tell us what you've been up to these past couple of years?
Well, I'm very fortunate. I have a grandson
Oh.
in that 2-year period.
Yes.
I have an 8-year-old granddaughter, and I have an 18-month-old grandson.
Okay.
So great blessings have been bestowed upon our family.
Yes, that's very good. That's good. Well, you know, I'm going to get right to the heart of the discussion today. You know, normally I try to stay away from somewhat volatile social issues and politics. I've done pretty good with the political stuff. I haven't, you know, touched on that. But I have had so many groups and individuals, family members, friends, relatives, colleagues, co-workers, coming to me about the Black Lives Matter issue. I had one group to tell me that this was something that the Ku Klux Klan and the Black Panthers were putting together to start a fight among the races because those two organizations want to fight. I had another group say something to the effect of, you know, the title is okay, but why couldn't the word too, Black Lives Matter too, why couldn't that be added to it? Because it gives the appearance that no other lives matter other than Black lives. And I could go on and on with the various different things that people have been saying. I've talked to friends where husbands and wives are almost about to get a divorce because of this issue, and I'm not too far from that myself personally, because my husband and I, we argue about some of the things that are going on almost every morning. So I'm all ears to hear what you have to say and what you have to say to viewers about this subject.
Okay. Black Lives Matter is one of the declarative statements about the existentialistic reality of the African American community. The existentialistic reality of the African American community is that we are in a constant state of systemic institutional white racism. And in order to better understand that and not become upset and angry, I would recommend several things for your reading or for your viewing. To understand Western civilization and its manifest destiny, an excellent book was written some 20 years ago called Guns, Germs, and Steel, and the author is Diamond. They now have this, the National Geographic does, in a visual set of DVDs that you could order or purchase. You can use them for your church, your school, or any number of agencies, so people can get an understanding of what is the idea of manifest destiny and how is that to come into reality. When I talk about systemic institutional white racism, systemic comes from the, in the way that I think about it, comes from Ludwig von Bertalanffy's premier work on general systems theory. So in general systems theory, you have inputs, that's your raw materials, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. You have process, is what you do with it. You have output, which is your product. And later, we began to add a fourth box, which was feedback. And feedback is to prepare you to improve the next time around, to change, or to really make an assessment and evaluation of what was accomplished. So if you think in terms of systemic institutional white racism, you're saying that the system in and of itself has passed laws and has enforced edicts that prevent, preclude, and block African Americans from the opportunities that are afforded to the rest of America. Okay? So we can go back to early slavery. Actually, the first people that came to this country, black or white, were indentured servants. They served 7 years. At the end of the 7 years, they were out. But in order to keep a labor force, in order to meet the demands for tobacco, that was primary, for the crop that was most important, the House of Burgess in Virginia began to pass laws. So where do you find that information? Go on Amazon or Google and write Virginia slavery laws. And it will give you all the way back to 16-something what was passed by the House of Burgess.
So they were actually called Virginia slavery laws?
Yes, that's that's how it's identifiable. So you pull them up and you'll see. And what you find is it comes out that any of your mothers who was a slave, then you are a slave forever. So you go back, your mother, your great-grandmother, in other words, a lot of the indentured servants were whites coming from Europe, and they married black former indentured servants together. And that's what you have I'm blocking the man in the plant, Washington, D.C. His mother was white, his father was black. She bought him as a slave because they had both been indentured servants, and then she freed him after she married him. So that's one thing that comes out. So whomever your mother might have been, if they can find one mother that was black, then you are black, you are a slave forever. The second was that the Church of England used to say that if you were baptized a Christian, because that's why you went to Africa to get the slaves and to bring them to Christianity, once baptized, then you should be free. Well, that was changed right here with the House of Burgess. And so there were many things that became systemic in blocking blacks from having access to all of the things that you have in the regular history. Now, after slavery, you have to pass the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments.
Right.
But in 1877, you get a situation in which one man wants to be president, and the only way he can do that is for the Southerners to vote with him. Their request was, if you want to be the president, then you must withdraw the federal troops from the South. And that was the end of Reconstruction for blacks. Then after that, it goes right back to those same patterns of segregation, subjugation. And you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, you can't do that. So it was the blocking of one's civil rights. And of course, Plessy versus Ferguson, where it is said that no black has any rights that supersede those of whites.
Plessy versus Ferguson.
Yeah.
I remember that, yeah.
Okay, so now you have that same system of Jim Crow and segregation that's operative up to the mid of this 20th century with Martin Luther King and that and so on. Now, I'm a veteran, and we just heard a long program on veterans housing. But how many people know that when that bill was first passed, there were certain houses that you couldn't buy into in certain suburban areas? In other words, you could have a GI Bill, you could have your housing allowance, but you couldn't buy in those areas. And that was in the law.
Written
in the law. So for those areas. Okay? Now, so what I'm sharing with you is that that's what it means to be systemically. So we've always heard about the last hired and the first fired. Well, if you check those things out, you'll find them. Now, what is most odious to me is that after you have the Plessy versus Ferguson, you come into another reality where people would say, well, why don't you leave? Why don't you go away? Why don't you go someplace else? Well, as African Americans tried to leave the South, which represented the labor force, if they're walking down the road, they could be picked up and declared a vagrant, put on a chain gang, and forced into labor, which was slave labor. Now, again, for school classes, for your church discussion, this is another video that's called Slavery by Another Name. Slavery by Another Name. And Blackmon is the author of this book as well as this video. Now, the last time I was here, I talked to you about the rising anger in the young African American population. And my fear was that we would get to a tipping point, right, and you would have people acting out.
And this was when you were speaking on racial profiling.
Yes.
Back then, yes.
Yes. So, and then also stop and frisk.
Right, stop and frisk,
yes.
That's right.
Okay. Well, since that time, are those things that I talked about, are they valid, are they true? Well, in great depth, you have this tremendous author, Michelle Alexander, who writes The New Jim Crow. It's a fantastic work. It's exquisitely written, and everything is documented, so you can't question the authenticity of what is here. You may not like what you read, but you cannot question what you read. Mass incarceration in the age of color blindness. Now, again, I'm always getting things for people to take to their church, to their family, so you can have small discussions for your school.
Right.
Here you have the New Jim Crow study guide and a call to action, which is a complementary work to the work itself, the New Jim Crow. So
is that by the same author?
No, it's another author
okay.
altogether. But
okay.
it's the idea is just to have that, use this supplemental study guide to help you through this major text.
Okay.
And that could be a book club or anything that you want to do. Now,
before you go into that, we're going to take a short station break.
Okay.
And then we'll be right back for that. So we're going to take a short break, but we'll be right back after these important messages. So don't touch that dial.
How can you keep your wealth in good health? How can you protect yourself? Each week, the hosts and guests provide education about wealth empowerment, tax laws, healthcare basics, retirement strategies, money management, and much more.
Welcome back to Rock Your Block with our special guest, Dr. Edwin J. Nichols, Director of Nichols and Associates, Inc. Now, I'm not going to be doing a lot of talking and asking questions because I think that what Dr. Nichols is bringing today is very important, and so we want to use the balance of our time to listen and to learn. So without any further ado, Dr. Nichols, you're on.
Okay, so the major topic was the expression Black Lives Matter. In order to better understand the anxiety that people have, both in the press, the media, and in personal lives and so on, about the statement Black Lives Matter, we must understand the process. Remember I told you input, process, output.
Right.
The process of the specific system of logic that we're going to analyze. Traditional Western logic, the traditional logic system utilized in Western civilization is dichotomous logic. Logic asks the question, how do you reason to an answer? There's nothing wrong with dichotomous logic. We use it every day. It's binary. So you can have plus or minus, yes or no, A or B, 0 or 1. There's nothing wrong with dichotomous logic. But what happens is there is a misuse of dichotomous logic which corrupts it and its validity and its form. It forms an ism and its validity is lost and privilege is given to one group. And I'll discuss that in greater detail. But now again, back to the idea of Black Lives Matter. Historically, African Americans make a declarative statement about their existentialistic reality. Black lives are constantly under the oppression of, again, systemic institutional white racism. Now, once you make a declarative statement, it expresses your reality. It's subject to this systemic institutional white racism. I'm telling you what my experiences are, what is real for me. Now, once you make that statement on the television, the major population sees it as an accusatory statement. You're accusing us. And so immediately people become defensive. It's not true. This is the best country in the world. If you're not happy, go back to wherever you came from. Or you're not patriotic. You're unpatriotic.
Right. Yeah.
Okay? So those are the kinds of things you see. So first you have the declarative statement. Black Lives Matter. That comes out of my whole existentialistic reality. But once it's out, people seize on it and say, you're accusing us of something. Well, they don't say what that something is. They don't deal with that. Now, how do you systemically cope with that expression? It's changed to be an inclusive statement. So, if Black Lives Matter too, all Black lives matter, that is white lives and black lives and yellow lives and brown lives and red lives. You see? So when you expand it to be inclusive, the impact is lost, and the effect in that repackaging of all these groups in there is the message is neutralized. It's no longer a powerful message.
Right.
And in order to supplement that, you have all kinds of organizations, groups, and things that will talk about things matter. So earlier today you heard something mattered. Now this is something that says nutrition matters.
Right.
You see? So what you're doing is you're neutralizing the effect of the coded word Black Lives Matter. It's completely neutralized. It has no more bearing or any more strength. Now, again, historically, when a declarative statement was made, black is beautiful. That's a statement. Now, the overt statement of inclusiveness was, well, all colors are beautiful. All, black is pretty, right? All right, again, the covert agenda, you see, you have an overt statement and a covert agenda. The covert agenda was to neutralize the statement, black is beautiful. Now, in the study of logic and rhetoric, there's another thing which is called the ergo sentence. Ergo is from the Latin, which means and therefore, okay? And the reasoning that goes with that is dichotomous reasoning, plus or minus, yes or no, but it's corrupted, and I'll show you how that works. So the covert agenda, which is to neutralize, and then the anxiety, which is where we get all the problems, is when you put it into the ergo sentence structure. So if black is beautiful, ergo white is ugly.
Ugly. Is that binary?
That's that binary.
That's that binary effect, okay.
Black lives matter, ergo white lives do not matter. Do you see what that is?
Yeah.
So we have to remember that there's a declarative statement, Black Lives Matter. Why are you making that statement? Because of my existentialistic reality. How many people have we seen in this last year that have been shot by police on questionable circumstances? We even have one today where the police woman is going to be charged with involuntary manslaughter. You have also at this time shooting And this woman is on tape saying, don't shoot my husband, don't shoot my husband. He said mental health issues, don't shoot my husband, and boom, he's killed. So when all of these things are present, a society tries to pull itself together by saying to the main society, look at our existence. Look what you're doing to us. Our experience is horrible. Please recognize that our Black lives matter.
Yes.
So you see, it's an expression of the existentialist reality. But it's seen as an accusatory statement. You are this, you are that. Okay? So now, what I would like to do is I would like to talk about another system of argumentation. And that system is that in a logical argument, you start at the beginning of the issues. And you don't start halfway down the process. So that is referred to as A, the beginning of the issues, their origin, their reason. And an outcome, or the way you react, is A prime. So when a society is confronted with its systemic institutional white racism, it becomes defensive. And I'm sure there are people who are listening to me right now who will become very defensive about that statement. But it doesn't negate the reality of the statement. There's an attack upon the individual, the group, but the argument starts at A prime, not A. Okay? So if this is A, they'll start their argument with what I said, Black Lives Matter, rather than to go here, A, with the system of systemic institutional white racism. They don't want to go back here. They want to start the argument here. Now, a perfect example of that in recent times is the football player who wouldn't stand for the national anthem. Mm-hmm. So when he didn't do that, where did they start the argument? Not with what he was saying his reality was, the discrimination against blacks and all the things that institutional white racism are involved in. They don't start there. They start with, he is unpatriotic because he will not stand for the national anthem.
And so that would be the A prime. That's the A prime.
That's the A prime, not going back to the real A.
Mm-hmm.
See? So the argument never starts at its origin, A. He's not unpatriotic. He's demonstrating against systemic institutional white racism. That's what he's demonstrating against. So I share these things with you because these are ways of looking at the radio, television, and making an assessment and an evaluation of what comes out and its analysis. Mm-hmm. So in the future, when the African American population, based on some systemic trauma, comes out with a statement like Black Lives Matter, mm-hmm. or a declarative statement, black is beautiful,
right.
Then don't seize upon it with accusatory statements of you're unfair, you're unjust, you're not paying attention, blah, blah, blah. Okay? And then, when that does happen, because it will happen, the purpose, you have to remember, is to develop overtly an inclusive statement. We're all happy, we're all together, we're all in love. Mm. And that packaging, it's kind of a repackaging of it.
Right.
The message is to neutralize it. Mm-hmm. So you come up with nutrition matters.
Right, right.
And a lot of other things now matter, okay?
Right. Well, I know we don't have much time. We have a little less than 3 minutes, but because of the theory that you have discussed today, is that why we can't sit down and have a real discussion?
Yes.
Because when you sit down and to try to have a discussion, we're starting that discussion at A prime instead of, is that what it is?
Yes.
Is that
we're
what
starting
it is?
at A prime, not at A.
And not at A.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see any change?
Well, if people are honest and really want to deal with it, they'll start at A.
Okay.
You see?
Mm-hmm.
That means that people get loans and other things that, why don't we have more black businesses? Well, it isn't because we lack genius for it. It's the fact that you don't get a loan, a business loan. They don't give it to you.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Well, then let's talk about that as a discriminatory factor. Don't talk about we don't have any black businesses in the black community. We have all these other ethnic groups there. Well, they were able to get loans and we weren't.
Right.
See?
So that's where it takes.
Don't talk about situation, well, blacks all live in those ghettos. I came to Washington, D.C. when on the deed that I had, it said no blacks, no Jews, no Indians living west of Rock Creek Park. When I first came to Washington years ago, I moved.
Right.
I didn't know anything about all that, and I lived on the west of Rock Creek Park.
I remember you talked about that some in our earlier segment.
So if you're going to be honest, we have to look at the history and go through it to see how many times issues were blocked and there was regression.
Dr. Nichols, are you willing to come back at some times when you are here in the country and let's do a part 2? I'd like to know more about the dichotomous logic.
I'd be very
and
glad
some other
to.
things. Would you do that for us?
I'd be very glad
I thank
to.
you so much for coming and for sharing with us.
Well, you see, with dichotomous logic, you get at isms like sexism.
Right, that's right. Racism, sexism, all the isms, we can deal with that.
That's
on that
the
end.
misuse of dichotomous logic.
Right. We are out of time, and I want to thank Dr. Nichols for deconstructing Black Lives Matter. We should all take time to make sure that we don't allow the media or outside influences to shape our thoughts and our hearts. Listen to all sides of an issue before making a hardline decision about anything. Thank you for watching Rock Your Block. Join us next week for part 2 of our series with Dr. Edwin J. Nichols on dichotomous logic. Bye-bye.